Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Zeina Klinkhoppe and I am the curator for the Modern Middle Eastern and Central Asian collections at the British Museum. I am delighted to host today's session entitled Making Their Mark, Women Silversmiths from Oman, which is part of the public program for our current exhibition in Room 3, which I co-curated with my colleague, Dr. Oud Mongiati, who specializes in metals in the Department of Scientific Research at the British Museum. Oud and I were greatly supported by international collaborators from Oman, the United States, and Canada, and I will be introducing you to each one of them shortly. This display presents the result of research and fieldwork carried out by our speakers between 2019 and 2022 as part of an ongoing research project originally launched by the British Museum. But before I begin a conversation with the research team behind the Women Silversmiths of Oman project, I would like to say a few words about the display in case members of the audience have not had the opportunity to see it at the British Museum. And I would like to remind you, please, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A box and we will attempt to answer them, or as many of them as possible, towards the end of the chapter. So Making Their Mark, Women Silversmiths of Oman, celebrates the work of 3 generations of women from Oman, through 3 women. Tuful Ramadan, born in 1949, but who sadly passed away in 2021. Mahfoudha al-Balushi, who was born in 1965, and Fatma al Najjar, who was born in 1992. The display also includes short videos and footage, which talks about in which they talk about their personal experiences and is a bit of a personal testimony. In addition, in those testimonies, they speak about how they were able to succeed in a profession that is usually dominated by men in this region of the world. Their knowledge and their technical skills are highlighted through scientific images and investigations conducted by Dr. Oud Mongiati at the British Museum, and the images have been included in the exhibition, and they highlight the intricacy of their work and the mastery of their craft. So Making Their Mark is the last of a series of displays known as the Asahi Shimbun displays. These are usually held in a room, room 3, close to the entrance of the British Museum. And our exhibitions usually revolving either around an object or a person or a concept, and are meant to be slightly more innovative and experimental in nature. Through these displays, the British Museum analyzes and considers new ideas and concepts that they would like to test before implementing them in their main exhibitions or other galleries. So these exhibitions, these Asahi Shimbun displays, are actually made possible by the generous support of the Asahi Shimbun Company, which is a prestigious publishing company in Japan who has been a very long-standing supporter of the British Museum. So as you look into room 3, your eyes are immediately drawn towards the back of the room, towards a series of silvery, shiny, glittery images that draw you in. And these are images, they are close-up images taken of the objects that are on display in the room. And they were taken by Oud in her lab, and they are made through, taken by an electron microscope and a normal microscope. Sorry, Oud, I may have got the terminology wrong, but I've lost my script a little bit, so I know you will update the information. As your eyes get used to the lighting in the room, they focus then on a mannequin, which is with plaited hair and is dressed in a very dark indigo colored dress, and on which is layered a large number of pieces of jewelry, from plait ornaments, earrings, necklaces, and you can see anklets. The bracelets and rings, unfortunately, were too much to put in this case and have been displayed elsewhere in the museum in the Al-Bukhari Foundation Gallery. The mannequin, the jewelry on the mannequin dates from around the 1950s, 1960s, and is traditional of the Dhofar region in southern Oman. It represents a woman's personal wealth, and it offers her amuletic protection. The handcrafted work of the three women that we mentioned earlier, Tuful, Fatma, and Mahfoudha, in a sense draws inspiration from these older pieces through the forms and through the motifs. Here's a general view of the exhibition space, where you can see in it that in addition to the backdrop of scientific images and the mannequin, there are two table cases which contain the actual pieces made by Mahfoudha and Fatma. There is also a symmetry in the arrangement of the cases, with on one side pieces made for women by Tuful and Fatma, and on the other side pieces made for men made by Mahfoudha. Famida, can I have the next slide, please? So as you enter, the case on the left when you come in contains the very delicate rings, which you can see a little bit in the back of the case, right closest to you in the slide, a pendant and a bracelet. And these are all made by the late Tuful. And there is also a belt and some earrings or pendants, which are designed by Fatma. And on the wall, usually near the cases, are panels that introduce these two wonderful ladies to the viewers and the visitors, and also a screen on which their testimonies are presented. On the opposite side of the room is the other table case, which contains the pieces for men made by Mahfoudha. And there is a leather belt, a detail of which you can see closer on the slide, as at the bottom of the slide. And it is a leather belt made for a khanjar, or a dagger. And it is extremely finely embroidered with silver thread. And it is displayed in the same case alongside a more historic belt and a khanjar from the British Museum's collections. And in a sense, this highlights the continuity of techniques and of designs. In addition, in this case is a ceremonial men's stick, which you can see on the top part of the case alongside the dagger. And it is the kind of ceremonial stick that would have been used by men at festive occasions and at ceremonial events. It is also made by Mahfoudha. And like on the other side of the room, there is a panel presenting Mahfoudha to the visitors, and a screen on which she can be heard giving her personal testimony. You will notice also that we have sometimes included images on the label slope. And these are to help to create context or to highlight something in specific. And we have also included some of the images that Aude has taken in the lab as the scientific images of the piece to help give more information about techniques. The films and the quotes, both in the native Arabic and English, bring the visitors closer to the silversmiths, and they create a more personal, intimate connection, as the visitors can actually hear the silversmiths talk about their work and their experiences in their own words. So now that there is a better kind of understanding of what the exhibition is about and what it looks like, I would like to begin the conversation with members of the research team. And I would like to begin with Dr. Famida Suleiman. Famida is a curator of the Islamic World Collections at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. But Famida and I have known each other for a long time, and we've worked together for a long time, when we both jointly shared the post of Phyllis Bishop Curators of the Modern Middle East at the British Museum. And we both worked together as part of the team that developed and delivered the Al-Bukhari Foundation Gallery of the Islamic World in 2018, which is the year that Famida moved to Canada. So Famida, your interest in Omani silver, I think, began much earlier than the research onto the project on women silversmiths of Oman. Could you please share with us how this research developed and what you really find interesting or fascinating about Omani silver?
Thank you, Zaina, for your kind introduction and for inviting us to be part of today's program. My interest in Oman and its long-standing tradition of silversmithing began in 2009 when I joined the BM as curator of the Modern Middle East. And one of my first projects was to register over 300 individual pieces of Omani jewelry and accessories that were purchased for the collection from a British couple who lived in Oman in the 1980s, Denise and Alan Costley. I was tasked to put together an exhibition in about 9 months, and the project was sponsored by BP Oman and the Ministry of Tourism of the Sultanate of Oman to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the late ruler, His Majesty Sultan Qaboos bin Said. The exhibition was called Adornment and Identity, Jewelry and Costume from Oman. As you can see, I have the little poster there and I have a view from the exhibition. This is when I took my first trip to Oman and traveled around the country visiting large and small museums, meeting many experts, silversmiths, and embroiderers. This was also the time I forged a lasting friendship with two of the project collaborators, Aude Mongiati at the British Museum and Marcia Stegeth-Dor, who worked for the Ministry of Tourism of Oman in Muscat and lived in the country for over 25 years. Marcia introduced me to an 80-year-old silversmith in the city of Nizwa, Salim Ashareki, and we were able to interview him for the exhibition. It was also through the exhibition project that I became familiar with Marcia's 2-volume survey of the craft heritage of Oman, co-authored with Neil Richardson. I will let Marcia tell you more about this landmark study, but I want to mention that this is when we first began discussing the unique tradition of female silversmithing in Oman, because Marcia and Neil's publication is the only study we know of that had ever mentioned this tradition, at least in the English language. So this occasion allowed us to plant the seed for the project we are working on now. The BM's 2011 exhibition also opened up new collaborative possibilities when Aude and I started working together on the analysis of the BM's collection of Omani jewelry. Her scientifically driven questions about this collection excited me as a curator on how much more we could learn by studying the composition of materials, manufacturing techniques, and silversmithing tools. So the X-ray images on the screen were taken by Aude and used in the 2011 exhibition in order to emphasize the multi-sensory nature of Omani silver jewelry, because a lot of it is meant to make pleasant sounds. So the sounds of jingling bells on headdresses and necklaces, or the rattling of small beads inside hollow anklets and bracelets. And I show you a hollow anklet on the top and a bracelet on the bottom, and you can just see through her X-rays what is inside that makes that rattling noise. There are so many aspects of Omani silver jewelry that I find fascinating. The first time I made a real connection with Oman was as a master's student when I was studying the architecture on the island of Zanzibar in the mid-1990s. That's when I came to know that Zanzibar was part of the Sultanate of Oman, and I also read the memoirs of an Arabian princess, the personal memoirs of Omani Princess Saida Salme bint Said, the daughter of one of the most powerful rulers of Oman and Zanzibar. Princess Salme's memoirs, published in 1866, provide a first-hand account of the significance and use of silver in a broader Omani context. A new translation of her memoirs was published in 2022, I have the cover there, by the by the princess's great-great-granddaughter, which I'm very excited to read soon. And I think Marcia is the only one on the team who actually met her recently. The images on the screen also include a picture of the clothing and jewelry that once belonged to Princess Salme, which are displayed at the National Museum of Oman in Muscat. And what is evident from her collection is the remarkable continuity of style over the ages, which we can plainly see if we compare her jewelry, which dates to around 1860, with the British Museum's collection, which dates mainly to the 1950s. I should mention here that Moza Suleiman Al-Wardi, our fourth collaborator on the research project, was Director of Collections and Senior Curator at the National Museum of Oman, and she will tell you more about just how old the tradition of Omani silver is. Another aspect, interesting aspect of Omani jewelry is that women's ornaments can be worn literally from head to toe, from headdresses and hair ornaments to anklets and toe rings, and everything in between. So it is a jewelry wearer's paradise. Individual pieces of jewelry are both beautiful and functional, with each having a specific name or a special meaning attached to it. Jewelry can possess religious or amuletic significance, indicate a woman's financial or marital status, and jewelry often represents tribal or regional identities and protects the wearer from evil influences, bringing happiness and good health. Silver jewelry was also combined with other materials such as coral, carnelian, or even synthetic beads made to resemble such materials. Many of the pieces have pendants, such as Austrian thalers and Indian rupees, which signify complex historical and geographical connections and Oman's position as a key player within Indian Ocean trade. But I think what really opened up new avenues of research for me was the fact that silversmithing as a craft has not completely vanished in Oman as it has in other parts of the Arabian Peninsula. It has certainly diminished over many decades due to shifting tastes in fashion and the higher status assigned to gold. But meeting Tuful Ramadan in 2019, who was then in her 80s, and spending time at her home, interviewing her and meeting her family, was a truly life-changing moment for the whole team. She shared her story of how she began silversmithing at the age of 14 and how she became widowed in her mid-20s and managed to raise her 3 sons on her own as a skilled silversmith. She also confirmed that both men and women silversmiths were active in Oman in the early 20th century. Tuful also explained how Dofari women traditionally wear their silver jewelry by adorning her granddaughter with her own pieces, as you can see in the image: a headdress, earrings, multiple necklaces, bracelets, finger rings, and jingling anklets. And this really kicked off the whole research project for us.
Thank you, Famida. That's very interesting. I'd like to turn to Aude at the moment. Now that we know a little bit about the background of how the project developed, Aude, perhaps you can tell us what role the scientific analysis has played in the making of this exhibition, and what is it that really originally sparked your interest in Omani silver?
Sure. Thank you, Zaina. So the British Museum, we are really lucky, holds a department of scientific research where analysis of the can be conducted on objects of the collection. And as already mentioned by Famida, these analysis and scientific studies help to answer questions such as what are the objects made of, and how have they been made? So in other words, can we identify the materials and techniques used in their manufacture and decoration? And maybe even what tools have been used, as Famida was mentioning, silversmithing tools. So these scientific studies bring complementary information to the curatorial study of museum artifacts, and they enrich their narratives. So for the study of Omani silver, I mostly used digital, optical, and scanning electron microscopy to study the objects more closely and look for tool marks and surface texture, because they give us clues about the potential metal working techniques used. And here you can see Marcia at an optical microscope and myself sitting at the scanning electron microscope. When objects are complete and three-dimensional, it is sometimes relevant to understand what they're hiding inside. And Famida has shown you a very nice example. So we use X-radiography when it's the case, and we want to have information which we can't get through microscopy. And you can see the setup, the facility for X-radiography in our lab on the bottom left of the slide. And to answer your second question, Zaina, about the interest in Omani silver, I think there were two reasons. I think the first was studying a material culture, which I knew very little about, and from a part of the world which I was very interested in, but I had not had the chance to work on until now. And the second was the opportunity to study a living heritage and craft, meaning the possibility of meeting practicing silversmiths and discussing technological and material choices with them. I mean, this was opening a new dimension for me, as I normally would study archaeological assemblages or treasures from centuries or millennia ago, which means, as you can imagine, no encounter with the artisans who made them to ask them how they made the objects. So here I'm showing you images which were captured with the digital microscope. There are details, they show details of a finger ring on the left and of a bracelet, both made by Tuful, and which are very similar to the pieces of jewelry that she's herself wearing, shown on the photo on the right. And looking at such small objects under a microscope, as I mentioned, allows to look for hidden or less visible tool marks and surface textures and joins, I mean, how little elements have been assembled. And so here, I hope you can really grasp the intricacy and high level of skills when you realize that the scale bar shown in these images is only 1 millimeter. So Tuful creates very small pieces made of silver sheet and wire, and she assembles them together very skillfully. She uses a variety of tools, such as hammers of different sizes and pliers to shape the silver sheets and wires. She also uses dies into which she hammers the silver to create motifs. Each decorated piece is then cut to shape and added to the main body of the objects she intends to make. Here, the finger ring on the left has multiple twisted and false beaded wires and some granules on its edge as well, which have all been individually made and then soldered to the body of the ring. And then the bracelet in the middle also shows very tiny elements, many of them made of wire and sheet, bent or cut into shape and soldered together to create the various chains. For instance, you can see the various figures of 8, the diamond shapes, or the little loops. And to share even further the amazing details of Tuful's creation with the public, and because her objects are all of very small size, Tuful's finger rings were 3D scanned by an external company specializing in this technique to recreate them as volumes and allow us to display them as videos, like the one you are watching at the moment. And then my colleague, Kimberly Michan, a very talented researcher specializing in imaging techniques, then put the texture and color back into the volume render of the rings. She also expertly added high-resolution images captured with the digital microscope, which are the still images you can see, like this one now, in specific locations to help show the different silver elements which have been decorated and attached together using soldering. And she finally created these videos which truly reveal Tuful's work. And I hope you will agree with me after having shown this one. So here, we are now turning to images captured using the scanning electron microscope. Or SEM. That's going to be easier for me to say from now on. SEM, I have to say. So the SEM uses electrons as a source to excite the object and not light like a traditional microscope, the optical or the digital microscope. And then it has different detectors it has detectors to detect different types of electrons to create the images, hence the fact that they are in black and white. And so here you're looking at close-up images of the Khanjar's leather belt made by Mahfoudha. There's a portion of the belt in the middle. And so these specific images, they use the density of the materials to create the contrast and brightness. And so the lighter a material is, the darker it will appear on the image. And so here in the top two images, the leather appears black or non-visible because it is an organic material and it is much lighter than the silver, which then being much denser appears very bright. And so I hope that you agree that these images really highlight the neatness and accuracy of the silver embroidery on the leather, which Mahfoudha achieves by hand stitching the silver wire into the leather. And then the bottom two images show how Mahfoudha works the silver sheets elements of the belt. The image on the right reveals a similar technique to Tuful's, which is the hammering of the sheet into a die to shape it. The image on the left shows two repeated motifs, one of a star and one of a flower, which suggest a different technique called punching, where a small single metal punch with a desired motif at one end is gently hammered into the sheet multiple times. These are also images captured with the SEM, and there are close-ups of one of Fatma's earrings. And you can see the stunning belt and its matching pendant earrings as they would be worn in the photo on the right. And here these images also reveal the handworking of silver sheets and wire using long-standing silversmithing techniques, like the ones used by Tuful and Mahfoudha. The false beaded wire at the edges were most likely created by hammering a plain wire into a die, then soldered to the main triangular plate, which makes the body of the earring. And the moon crescent shapes, for instance, which are highly three-dimensional, were also made by hammering silver sheet into a die and soldered onto that same plate. Wires were shaped into loops or pulled through the pendants, such as the pearl beads that you can see in the top left corner image. So Fatma is an artist and artisan living and working in Muscat. We met her in 2022 during our second field trip to Oman for this project at an event organized by Polly and Felix Gidney, our amazing host during our stay in Muscat, whom we cannot thank enough for their generosity and for having created the opportunity of our encounter with Fatma. Fatma designs her jewelry and aspires to train as a silversmith in the near future. What struck us about Fatma was her innovative take on Omani silver jewelry. She creates very contemporary pieces which are inspired and infused by her cultural heritage. I will now let her tell you in her own words what truly inspires her.
My love for jewelry started when I was quite young. I would sit in my mother's room and watch her prepare herself for special occasions. I would get so excited when she would bring out this family heirloom, a traditional Dhafari necklace called the Rahina that has been the inspiration behind my jewelry brand. And to me, it's a lot more than just jewelry. It's a lived experience. It's going off-road, creating opportunities for myself, choosing a life that I want to lead, conducting business in my own terms, and digging deep beyond the I can't, and tapping into the creative life force within. It's the merging of the past and the present and the future. It's the delicate art of storytelling. It's an ode to my ancestors' wisdom and my heritage and the gift that keeps on giving. And ultimately, it's my platform where I can freely express.
Thank you for clarifying the differences with the microscopes that I messed up earlier in the conversation. And thank you very much for introducing us to Fatma al Najjar and for sharing a little bit the science behind the Omani Silver Project. And this really shows the richness of collaboration that can be had between different departments within a museum. Thanks, Aude. I would like to now move to the third collaborator on this project, and that is Marsha Stegath-Dorr, who is joining us from Ann Arbor in Michigan. Marsha, hello. And I would like to ask you something in a second, but let me first introduce you. Along with your contributions as the co-author of The Craft Heritage of Oman, which is a fabulous book that beautifully documents the artisanal traditions of Oman, you also served, as Famida said, as an advisor for the Omani government for over 25 years. And most recently, you also worked as a consultant on the brand new Oman Across Ages Museum, predominantly as a chief editor for the English language labels. Perhaps you would like to share with us a little bit, a few of the highlights of your exciting career in Oman and things that were specifically pivotal in supporting and documenting the tradition of Omani silver and craft.
Thank you, Zaina, for your lovely accolades. And good morning, everyone from snowy Michigan. It's very nice, Zaina, for you to ask me about my career. And as it happens, the story of my career is really the story of the beginning of our Making Their Mark project. So if you don't mind, I'll start there. The origins of our project stretch back more than 30 years. To the winter of 1989. And at that time, Dhofar was still a remote and mysterious corner of Arabia with a remarkable living heritage that was virtually unknown to the outside world. I was a UN technical expert with 1 week of experience, and I had been charged with the daunting task of saving Dhofari pottery, then considered a dying craft, and, if possible, other endangered crafts as well. At that time, acting as advisor to Huda Al-Ghazali, then Oman's Director of Women and Children's Development for the Ministry of Social Affairs and Labor, I had been invited to attend the opening of the region's first ever women's associations, which were to be located in Salalah, Taka, and Mirbat, and where I hoped to meet at least a few women artisans and learn firsthand about the problems they were facing. It's impossible today to express the hope and excitement surrounding the opening of these associations. I wish I could take you there. They were created for the express purpose of empowering and promoting women, and I was thrilled to be included. I have in this slide that you can see now a more recent picture of the Women's Association, along with one of their wonderful potters, Fatma, who was, we were discussing their frankincense burner, which you can also see examples of frankincense burners from that time, from the earlier time in the foreground. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of that time to share, but I can tell you it was thrilling. And I was thrilled to be included. Huda said on that day, "A nation looking ahead to prosperity cannot ignore the role of women. Only an intelligent, educated, and enthusiastic womanhood can prove equal to the tasks that confront it." You can imagine how that reverberated throughout the region. And during those first few days in Dhofar, hundreds of women artisans came forward to share their stories and demonstrate their amazing skills, many of which had been passed down from mother to daughter for centuries. All at the same time were struggling to redefine themselves and their crafts in Oman's headlong rush to modernity. Among these artisans, Tuful Ramadan and Ralia Ali stood out as women who had already successfully redefined themselves as silversmiths in an occupation long held to be the domain of men. Sometime around the middle of the 20th century, having recognized a demand for women silversmiths to produce jewelry and ornaments for other women. These two powerful women had set about acquiring the requisite jewelry making and business skills from their uncles and other male family members. As Tuful recalls, one day I was sitting with my sister, and her husband, who was a silversmith, came to me and said, "Tuful, do you want to work as a silversmith?" My sister is an educated woman, and she worked. So I said, "Yes." And he replied, "Come tomorrow." And I said, "Why wait till tomorrow? Let's start now." Next slide, please. Over the next 3 decades, I went on to work not only for the UN, but for the royal family, 7 different ministries, and 2 national museums in Oman. Under the sponsorship of His Highness Said Shihab bin Tariq Al Said, together with Neil Richardson, I traveled 40,000 kilometers by donkey, camel, and pickup truck, fishing dhow, and even helicopter to document Oman's remarkable living heritage. This work was to culminate in a 2-volume book, The Craft Heritage of Oman, and an archive of thousands of images, which now rests with the Oman Across Ages Museum. It also led to 6 years of grand adventures and resulted in thousands of friendships, as our determination to document every aspect of Oman's craft heritage led us from the Strait of Hormuz at night in rough seas, through the bustling souks of Oman's cosmopolitan capital, into the vast empty quarter, and along ancient caravan routes to the monsoon-shrouded frankincense groves of Dhofar. A Jabali wedding in the Dhofar Mountains is a particularly vivid memory, where the women shimmered, mirage-like, in silver jewelry layered over robes of burnished indigo. And this indelible memory is expressed in the central showcase of the exhibition at the British Museum. Next slide, please. Through the years, during all of this other activity, I kept crossing paths with Tuful and Ghalia, who never failed to amaze me. Among the many occasions that spring to mind are working alongside Ghalia in a camel herding camp on the escarpment above Taka, and photographing Tuful in her workshop, seen here, where she painstakingly shared with us every aspect of her work for the documentation project. Both Tuful and Ghalia were naturally entrepreneurial and were also better able than the men to understand the needs and tastes of their women clients, and they soon came to command a large and loyal customer base and to become very successful businesswomen in their own right. In Tuful's words, an occupation is like a child. It starts small and then develops and gets bigger. Among our greatest joys in the undertaking of the Making Their Mark project was having the honor of spending time with Tuful in her final years, as she patiently shared her stories and her unique knowledge gained over a lifetime for the benefit of future generations of silversmiths and women. The following video segment is a small portion of the many hours of film captured by our team before Tuful passed away in 2021.
يوم وحدة جالسة كذا وأنا أكون جالسة عنده، قال لي ادخل، قلت له نعم. قال لي إذا بغيتي تشتغلي؟ قلت له أيوه. قال بكرة جيبي لي ريال 5 أو ريالين وتعالي هنا. قلت تشتغل، زوجته تشتغل كل شغل، أتعلم هذا تشتغل كل شيء. قلت له عاد بكرة مشان هذا الشيء اللي عندي شنو رغبة وليش هواية ما يصعب، لكن بس حاجة بتسوينها للشهرة لا يمكن توصلي. بعدين قلت له عاد بكرة ليش؟ الحين أسست خرجت الفنون أخيط أسوي دواير عندنا وأسوي تكايس وأسوي كل شيء على الهواية. إذا عندك رغبة بهواية ماشي صعب. أما أي حاجة أنت متأثرة وتبني لها للشهرة والسمعة لا يمكن توصلي لشيء. أتمنى يكون عندي متحف خاص وأبين حق محافظ ظفار كله.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Wow, what an experience your time in Oman must have been. And I can say that I, for one, would have loved to be a little fly on the back of your backpack, and experience just part of what you experienced there. Thank you for sharing that with us and for introducing us to the film and your experiences of Tuful. Thank you. I would like now to turn to the final collaborator on this project, Musa Suleiman Al-Wardi, who is joining us now from Nizwa in Oman. Musa, you have a very long association with the British Museum, and you were a fellow on the British Museum's International Training Program in 2013. And for members of the audience who have not heard of this program before, the International Training Program is a training program which is run by the British Museum every summer for a few weeks, roughly between 6 and 10, depending on the years. And it is aimed at museum and cultural heritage professionals across the world. And they come to the British Museum and spend the summer at the British Museum and at partner museums across the United Kingdom. And the focus of the program is the sharing of knowledge related to best museum practice. And in 2013, Musa formed part of the program, and this is when I first met Musa. Musa, you are currently the Assistant Director General for Museum Affairs at the Oman Across Ages Museum in Manna. But before that, you were the Director of the Collections Department at the National Museum of Oman in Muscat. And you played a critical role in the newly built museum's conceptualization and development. Perhaps you can share a little bit with us your journey in cultural heritage management and how that led you to study and work with Omani silver.
Thank you, Zainab, for your introduction, and I'm so happy to be here with my research team. My journey in cultural heritage of Oman is very long, but I'll try to make it shorter. Actually, I grew up between the city and the village in Samad al-Shan, and the small village in the countryside, surrounded by a lot of castles and forts. And I think Marcia, she knows more than, she knows a lot of that. So living in a part of this historical mud brick houses surround us, it had inspired me to preserve it and to bring it back to life. At that moment, the idea of my future life, it was very clear that I really want to study heritage and culture management. So I applied for a scholarship after graduation from university, from high school. I got a scholarship on tourism management, but it was not really what exactly I want, because after research on tourism management, it's not what exactly I really want. So I decided to work and save money to follow my dream. At that time, there was a post at the American International School as a receptionist and admin assistant. So I applied, I got the job. So I worked with TASIM for 5 years. During that time, I met Marcia. Marcia, she was one of the member board of trustees at the school. And every time when she come for a meeting, she come and talk to me. And she told me about the stories, about the craft and how she loved it and all the project that she was involved. So she was also another inspire. So I always take an opportunity when she comes at the school to really spend time and talk to her. But she's always busy running and she's always late. So at that time, for this 5 years working at TASIM, she introduced me to Muna. As you can see, the opening of the Oman Heritage Gallery in 1995 on the slide. The Muna, she's the owner of the Oman Heritage Gallery. Marsha, she's involved with it. The Oman Heritage Gallery is a non-profit organization. Its main aim is to preserve the past, creating the future by promoting the authenticity of Omani craft and also artists. So the Oman Heritage Gallery was being given 25 craft projects from the government to promote it and preserve it, and making sure there's a continuity of all these crafts in Oman. At that time I met Adam. Adam is the son of Marsha. He was the project manager for the projects, 25 projects. And also I met Stephanie, that he was his fiancée, but now they're already married and they have kids. So I joined the team as a project coordinator. I was involved with 5 projects. Silversmith was one of them. So during that time, I had to do a lot of research to find about the silversmith in Oman. I did contact Marsha, Muna, because they were involved before me and they know all the artists. So I've been traveling also, meeting them. And part of my project at that time, I really want to make sure there's a continuity and there's life back to this craft. So the image you can see on the top of the coppersmith and silversmith project in Nezwa Fort. During that time, there was a project by the Ministry of Tourism where Marsha was also involved on restoring and rehabilitation of the fort of Nezwa. So I did talk to Marsha and I told her that it's really nice if I can get 2 rooms in that space to restore them and to bring those crafts life into the space of the fort. So she really liked the idea. So I supervised the restoration of the 2-room, and I brought the crafts, the silversmith and the coppersmith project together in the space of Nezwa Fort. I set up a training and there was a good result on that. I can tell you later on. After that, if you can see the image of myself and Marsha meeting the trainer of the silversmith, Lubna, from Salalah. At the time of the project, I also visited Salalah. And there where actually I met Tuful Ramadan, and I also met Ghali al-Bas. Tuful, she was the last silversmith in Taqa. So I want to make sure that there's somebody else or there's a continuity of this craft. So I met Tuful in 2003 actually. So what I had done is I set up a training for 3 candidate ladies through the Taqa Women Association that Marsha, she talked about it also. And Lubna was one of them, the result of the training. Lubna, the good thing about her that she continued, but I think within a time of her career, she has stopped due to a financial issue, due to also the expense of the silver. But the good thing about her that, as you can see, or myself, we're all there together, the team, and I was discussing with her along with Marsha. The good thing about her that she had kept all the product that she had made it during her training with Tuful. So that was really good. And so she still, she knows how to make them, but I think she needs only kind of like a refreshing training for her again. So we're quite happy with that. So after the project, I decided to go to university. You know, after finishing my project, I made sure everything went well. I decided to go to university after I saved enough money to follow my dreams. So I went to Australia. I studied Heritage and Culture Management in Curtin University in Western Australia. I graduated in 2008. Now, actually, I will just jump 14 years. So now, actually, I've been appointed at Oman Across Age Museum. As you can see, it's in the middle slide, in the image of the slide. Oman Across Age Museum is just a new museum, just been opened in March. And actually, it's one of the largest museums in Oman. Here you can see also in Oman Across Age, we highlighting the importance of the silver silver jewelry of women in Salalah because it's all made by women, and also representative of the Dhufari, a female dress and all her accessories. After graduating from university, 2008, I got a job at the National Museum of Oman after 6 months of graduation from university. So I'm one of the key founder of the National Museum. I started in 2009. The project was under construction for 6 years. So I was a curator at that time. So I really built up the collection along with my team. I was involved with this project from A to Z, you know, you can just name it. So I was doing a lot of things. So also the National Museum, as you can see, we had also dedicated a dedicated gallery for the Land and the People. The Land and the People gallery actually is dedicated to the craft of Oman. It's presenting or showcasing two largest showcases in the world, presenting the craft of Oman and how actually the landscape has shaped this identity of craft. As you can see in the behind, there's a big large showcase with full of jewelry, silver jewelry. This is more on the north. And then at the back side, you can see on your right hand, you can see a display of the female dress from the Salal and also the silverware. And most of those jewelry were made by Tuful. So it was very important during the project for myself also to highlight the importance of the silversmith in Oman, not only by a woman, but also by a male. I would like to take you a bit back and tell the history of the silversmith or about the silver in Oman in general. The oldest objects were found in Oman in Samad al-Shan. It's dated to Iron Age period, is appended. It's on display at the National Museum. As you can see, the style did not really change that much. On your left and your right hand, you can see an image also of a jewelry. And the style did not change. That's more 20th century bracelet and necklace and earrings. It had the same style from the National Museum of Oman, and the one on the left, it's from the British Museum. So the style did not really change that much. So this is actually presenting that the silver did not start in now, but actually started from early time. Mahfoudha, I met Mahfoudha during also my project time with Oman Heritage Gallery when I'm doing my research. Mahfoudha, she's coming from a very well-known khanjar maker family. She learned her craft from her father, and she's the only female in Khabura who is actually still making the Khabura khanjar and also the civil bed that's also on display at the British Museum as part of our exhibition. I would just like to present her, and if can display, please.
بعدين نحن كحريم شغلنا غير يعني نتقن كل شغل نسوي هذا بإتقان يعني جيد نسوي هذا غير وهذا غير نفنن في الخنجر الرجال ما يعرفوا يفننوا يعني عفوا يعني أعتذبهم الرجال مهنتهم وهذه شعار قبل فأنا حرمة حبيت هذا الشغل واشتغلت نافست الرجال يعني الشغل هذا جدا يعني اتقان فيها وما حد يقدر يسويها يعني ما إلا حد يتعلم من جديد الشباب الجيل الجديد الخنجر ما يشتغلها شخص واحد مستحيل ماشي صار يقول أنا اشتغلت الخنجر أبدا لأن هذه فيها وايد الخنجر أولا فيها خشب لازم واحد من الخشب يشتغل ثانيا الفضة هذه قبل هذه الفضة صغيرة بعدين نشتغل نسحبها بالماكينة هذه أول نبدأ بهذه بعدين نترسها بهذه بعدين أصبحت قطاع متروسة.
Thank you, Moza. Actually, Famida, Aude, Marsha, and Moza, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your passion for Omani silver with us. I think we have a few minutes for Q&A, and I would like to open the audience Q&A session. Among the questions that seem to have come in, there are a couple that are quite interesting. One of them is from Raya Ahmed, who asks, what were the beads inside the hollow anklet made of? Perhaps Aude can answer that since she analyzed the anklet.
Or maybe not answer. That's going to be a better answer to that. The radiographs were great to actually show that as a group. I think we radiographed 11 pairs of bracelets, something like that, in anklets. I mean, a lot. What was very interesting is that all the material inside them were very different. Sometimes only one kind of material, sometimes a mixture of materials. But to really identify what they are, we would need to analyze them. I mean, some of them, we thought in between the sound they were making and what they looked like in the X-ray, that there could have been some little snippets of metal wire, for example. Others, they really look like little beads. Some were definitely little glass beads or plastic beads. We don't know the material, but they had a hole in them, so we could see they were beads. Some might have been some little bits of stone. They had not proper shapes. They were really random shapes. So we have hypotheses, but we don't know, and we can't get to them. So,
Aude, remember you asked me to get a sample from Salim Ashareki, what he used.
He used copper snippets, yes, snippets of copper wire, little fragments of that, which is why we could actually then see in one of them that it might have been a similar thing of a wire as well, but only in one. The others were really random. There was a whole collection of different materials, but that's still a mystery. We need another technique.
Maybe in the future.
Absolutely.
Another question that has come in from an anonymous viewer is, are there silver deposits in Oman which would have prompted the development of this craft? Perhaps Moza or Marsha could answer that question, or say if the silver is imported and how and what.
Well, I'm happy to answer if Moza, or would you rather?
It's fine. You can go ahead, Marsha.
Oman is famous for its copper deposits, and they were suppliers of copper to usher in the Bronze Age in Mesopotamia. However, silver, if there were any deposits, was relatively unknown and scarce. So the main source of silver was the metal obtained through trade, for example, with copper, and also through the frankincense trade, which was another resource that Oman had in the southern region. And they would trade for precious metals and other precious goods. But also, the coins that were used in trade, primarily the Maria Theresa thaler, were a primary source of copper. I mean, of silver.
Silver.
And were very high content silver with only a small amount of copper and no other metals in them. So they were just perfect for making silver that women would wear for a lifetime, that needed to be durable. It had a beautiful buttery feel to it, beautiful color. But it was, with that little bit of copper, was also very strong. And so I would say that was the primary source of silver. The Maria Theresa thaler, a very large coin that was produced originally in Austria and later on in other places in the trading world.
Thank you, Marsha. Unfortunately, we are running out of time for further questions. I think we really enjoyed our conversations tonight. But if there are any questions that have come into the chat that we have not answered, we will try and answer them if the the person asking could share their email. I would like to extend my thanks once again to all the speakers and to the audience, all of you who have joined us from near and far. Thank you very much for showing your interest in Omani silver and Omani women silversmiths. If you haven't had the chance yet to see the exhibition in room 3, the Making Their Mark exhibition, it is on until the 17th of December. And if you have an opportunity to come and see it, please come. It is really very nice. I'm a bit biased, but I will still say it is very, very nice. So once again, thank you all and good night.